Good morning, and it's the last distance learning citizenship lesson in the set. I don't know about you, but I have had a brilliant time in the centre, seeing all of these pieces of work come together, seeing all the creativity and hearing all the ideas, and journeying with all of the people who are in the centre as they've been building their own countries, as they have been incorporating these different aspects of the citizenship curriculum, as they've been creative in how they displayed them. And so what I'm really looking forward to is what you have been doing. I've got two last things to offer to you briefly today that I need added in, please, to your piece of work. And they are customs and they are cultural dress. Now, these both form part of the National Curriculum for Citizenship, which is national and local identity. Part of citizenship is learning about different forms of identity. How does a person feel, classify themselves as British in this case, and also within Britain, how are different cultural and different regional identities understood and expressed. So, Britain has a good number of different cultural norms. For example, there is the shall I get it the right way around? That's better. There is the very traditional sport of Morris dancing, which involves a lot of learning dance routines, a lot of fancy dressing up, and a lot of fairly lavish behaviour. There is, of course, maypole dancing, which is very common at this time of year in May. I'm sure that I've done it myself at school once, and it was very complicated. It was learning dance routines, and it was waving this, each of us holding a ribbon and waving it around the maypole. And that was a very extravagant thing to be doing. What about locally? In some places, they still have scarecrow making and dressing and decorating competitions. So, I don't know for what good reason, but it's definitely a thing in many places still. So, what different traditions might you have in your country which makes it unique? What about, say here, there's also afternoon tea. That's a thing, that's a British thing. There aren't many cultures that do afternoon tea, and it seems to be a particularly quaint thing, which happens in Britain. What about, do you have any national holidays? So we've got a bank holiday coming up. Each of our bank holidays and the other countries in Britain with their own, they are all rooted in different historical events. Just like here with Christmas Day and Boxing Day, do you have any religious holidays that your country celebrates? So, that's today. What about cultural norms? Traditions, customs, maybe you have some family customs that you can refer to. I know that for me, I had some family customs growing up. And so, would you want to make many of those part of your country? And as with everything, I'd love to know what reasons do you have for choosing the things that you're incorporating in. That's today. Tomorrow, I'd like to know, do you have, and I'm encouraging you to say, yes, I do you have a cultural dress? What I mean by that is, if you look on the handout that's come with this, perhaps less so in Britain, there used to be that all the city gents would wear bowler hats, and you can see in the picture there's a bloke drinking tea, and so he would have his pinstripe suit, he'd have his bowler hat, and maybe in some ways the guards, being a bit of a tourist thing, they have cultural dress. Although I don't know that so much these days there is a cultural dress here in Britain. In other places, there's a great sense of cultural dress. I have friends in church, in previous churches, who would wear their cultural attire to church, and they would be bringing their sense of culture as they worshipped with me. I know of a Nigerian family who I miss very much, who would dress up in their finery with all of their wonderful colours, and they would be so great to look at as they would be worshipping with me together in church. So, if you were going to design a cultural dress for your country, what would it be? And maybe thinking for a moment back to projects that you had done before my time here. What kind of materials would you be choosing? And what would be the reasons? As with everything else, what would be the reasons for this? So certainly for me, if I'm looking back in my own Design a Country piece of work, I would quite like, although I tend to wear fairly plain colours at work, so as not to draw attention to myself, in terms of cultural dress at J-Land, I quite like the colour scheme of the flag. So I might be, for reasons of each of those colours having meaning, for example, the creativity, the new life, and all that kind of stuff, I might have those as part of my cultural dress. And that brings us to the end of this piece of work. And I hope you've had a great time doing it. I hope you've learned a lot doing it. And just to go through super quick before I wrap up this video, you don't need to, at the moment at least, think about working with other countries yet. Although it is great to bear in mind that on the citizenship curriculum, you will at some point be studying that Britain does work with other countries. We have just left the European Union. We are a part of the United Nations. We're a part of NATO. And so if you fancied it for an extension task, you could be thinking, well, how would your country work with other countries? Either those that exist or those amongst TLG West London here. So, final checklist. Firstly, a balance of creativity, and this is really important, the content. So when I've asked you for theory and for reasons for your choices around that kind of thing, they are really important. You will have named your country, you will have given your citizens a title. I want to know where in the world is your country. You will have looked at your governance, that's the vocab to be using. How is your country run? Who by? How are they funded? Who helps them? Then you went on to look at your national flag and the motto behind and to accompany the flag. And I asked you think about how much freedom do your citizens have? If there's a state religion, if protest is allowed, if there's a free press. What about rights and responsibilities? What are 5 things that you think are really important for your citizens to have as rights? And with every right comes responsibility. So what responsibilities have you asked of your citizens? Then I asked, what about your national dish? And how is that important to you? I asked you, what about your national leadership? So not only the style of governance, but what kind of promises would you or your leaders, if you've chosen somebody else, make to your country? Do the rulers interact much on special occasions? Are you in a castle far away? Some people have got themselves private islands here. I really want to be involved in the midst of it. So if you remember in J-Land, my apartment block, which is not just for me, I'm sharing it of course, my apartment block has got my office on the very ground floor there. So whereabouts are you based? Then I ask you to think about your criminal justice system. So how is the law upheld? By whom? And also 5 key laws. You might have more, but think of 5 really important laws for your country. Then I ask you to add a national anthem, which is at least 1 verse long, and it can be a new tune or a pre-existing tune that you've put new words to. And finally this week, culture, including stuff like public holidays, and national dress. And if you really wanted an extension activity to get yourself prepared for future work, how might you be proposing, if the chance ever came about, that your country could work with other countries? That's all from me. Have a great time with this last bit. You've done so well to be working on this, last little stretch on this, and I look forward to seeing these and you very, very soon.